Welcome back to another edition of the Witsup Weekly Grind. Now, we're ready to go ahead and introduce Matilda Raynolds straight off the bat. However, I've literally muted her so that you can't hear her right now because we have some breaking news to bring you, and it's not great news, I'm afraid. Unfortunately, the NOOSA triathlon for this year, so it was meant to take place on between the 28th of October and the 1st of November this year, 2020, has been cancelled, and that is due to the NOOSA Council deciding that they will not allow events over 500 people to take place in the NOOSA Shire, which means that the biggest event on the global calendar for multi-sport has been cancelled, and it's pretty devastating. I think a lot of people were hoping that it would go ahead in some capacity, and I know the team were trying to find ways to make that multi-sport weekend, because it's a festival. It's not just the triathlon. There's so much involved with it, including the crit racing, the ASICS Bolt, the kids event. There's so many events as part of that NOOSA festival. And it was set to be the 38th edition of that event. And unfortunately, it has been cancelled. Apparently, if you have signed up for the event, you will receive an email, any day soon, once the team figure out what will be happening with all those entries. If you did sign up for NOOSA Tri, please leave us a comment, let us know your thoughts. We would love to hear from you. But now, and I think Matilda was probably going to talk a little bit about this because she's involved with the NOOSA Tri back when she was a triathlete, but also as an elite cyclist as well. But we're getting her on to mainly talk about Le Course, the women's elite event as part of Le Tour de France. Butchered it, I know, but doesn't matter. But I'm sure she's got a few things to say about the NOOSA Triathlon Festival as well. So please welcome to the Witsup Weekly Grind, my good friend, legend that she is, Matilda Raynolds. Oh, I always forget. I need to do the crowd noise. I do. There you go. You're unmuted. I do have a crowd noise that goes.
I'll just pretend it's pretty much what I always do. There was a lot of crowd noise.
you roll out of bed and the crowd are cheering, right?
Every time I'm on Zwift.
Mate,
hi everyone.
How I briefed you very quickly before we went live with this, and we've just found out that the NOOSA Tri Festival has been cancelled for 2020. What's your thoughts as being, like, you've played a big role, you've been a part of it for years?
Yeah, it holds a very, very special place in my heart, like it does for so many triathletes, athletes, sponsors of the sport. But my first thought just goes out to the businesses in the area. It's actually the NOOSA Triathlon brings in millions of dollars over what everyone stays for, at least 5 days. I think you have to as a part of your accommodation agreement up there. But you're sort of forced to stay in paradise, which is okay. But yeah, it's terribly disappointing for the people around NOOSA, the tourism industry up there, and the organisers. It is, of course, it had to take this type of global pandemic to put a pause on NOOSA. But it's obviously the right call in these times, just the thousands of people in a very small area, and in an area which would have minimal resources to cope with should there be an outbreak, and likely a very elderly community, apart from the pros that live up there.
Did you just call Belinda Granger old?
Yeah, so there's her, and then, maybe there's a few little ITU athletes, so that sort of discrepancy that live up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if that's the case, I don't know, I'd love to see at least even a pro race go on where there is coverage, or it is a course that could really lend itself to some sort of ITU course where you could get all of the Australian pros in there if the borders are open. But it might just be too much work for them at the moment, and no sort of return on investment for Ironman to do something like that. But yeah, disappointing, but probably not surprising.
And so the women's crit that's held on the Saturday of the weekend, how big does that factor in Australian women's cycling?
It's getting better. It's a bit of a bonus because the crit itself doesn't actually lend itself towards anything greater. It doesn't have the necessarily the prestige of winning the NOOSA triathlon up there, but it doesn't actually lend itself to no national road series points, or it's not necessarily something that's going to really stand out on your CV in results. But it certainly is a brilliant event. It's a great canvas to promote women's cycling and cycling to that audience, and and it's great coverage around the country online. But look, it's probably more really disappointing because it was a long shot that we were going to be able to go up there, and that could be a race that we do this year, because they are very quickly disappearing.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to move on. And if anyone, again, if you were signed up for the NOOSA Tri in any sort of, if you're part of a team or if you're just going up there to support, please leave a comment. Let us know your thoughts. Once again, if you're just tuning in, the NOOSA Triathlon or multisport weekend has been cancelled due to the NOOSA Council not allowing any events over 500 people until February 2021. So that means NOOSA Triathlon is absolutely out. But Tills, I got you on here because over the weekend we had La Course, the elite women's race, as part of Le Tour de France. Can you say the Tour of France if you live in Australia and you don't want to butcher the French language? Or is that no, you've got to have a go?
Haven't heard of it like that, particularly said by a media commentator and lover of sport. But yeah, I think let's just be upfront quickly. Neither of us are Dutch or European, so there's going to be a lot of butchering of names and whenever we talk about cycling. But yeah, we'll run with the Tour de France is currently on, and this year, the first time in its history of La Course being a part of the tour, it actually was the day before the tour started. It's usually somewhere within the tour or at the end usually at the end of the tour. So this year, very, very compact women's calendar this year, and they had it the day before the tour started. And I would not call it a warm-up because it was one of the best races we've seen in La Course to date. Yeah.
So talk us through the women who are involved this year. And to be honest, Marianne Vos, I feel like she's been around forever and is still just killing it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she retired for a really good amount of time, because she actually came and spent some time in Australia on a bit of she loves coming down here, loves going to WA and having some time off, and she did that. She came to Melbourne for a while a few years ago and just really was no longer a professional athlete. She leads one of the professional teams now and rides on it. She's the team captain. She heads up the team professionally, off the course, and then going into the race and in the final few kilometres in La Course, she was the favourite. So, Marianne Vos is, if you don't know, she's not one of the most successful female cyclists, but one of the most successful cyclists just in general. She is the Serena Williams of tennis. She's she's an incredible cyclist, and I really recommend you read up on her, and still to this day is absolutely killing it. Yeah.
So as far as Laura Siddall actually opened my eyes up to this, and apparently this year the La Course was the highest rated viewing over every year. So what was so exciting about this particular race? Talk us through the favourites, the winner.
Yeah, so there'll probably be a few spoilers, but I just really want to preface this, and then the biggest takeaway is please go watch it. There's a number of multimedia platforms that you can go watch it on. SBS is doing incredible coverage. We've got our own Matt Keenan and Bridie O'Donnell who are commentating that. If you're overseas, it was all over Eurosport, and then globally, a company called GCN Racing actually have a racing app you can download, subscribe, and watch all of the women's racing, of which over the past few weeks there's been some incredible races going on. And so this year's the course was a 96-kilometre race. It was criticised by some of the riders publicly that it was going to be too short. The current world champion, Annemiek van Vleuten, publicly came out on Twitter and rubbished the course, saying it wasn't long enough. And some of our very own Australian riders, Chloe Hoskins, fired back at her to say it would be an exciting race. And I think it was always going to be an exciting race. It was predicted to come down to a bunch sprint, of which we haven't had since the Tour Down Under in January. And so it was exciting to potentially have a different course that wasn't just, one massive berg in the middle and one solo rider gets away, which is usually Annemiek, which is why she was so critical of the course. So it was a slightly hillier course, predicted to be a bunch sprint, and it wasn't. So how it quickly played out, I guess, it all came down to the very last climb, came back together, and Annemiek drove it, as she loves to do. She's the world champion. She rides for the Australian team, Mitchelton Scott. She's a Dutch woman, and she absolutely drove it on the front. What was weird was that she drove it on the front for like 10 kilometres unnecessarily. So she split the race up. Some really elite riders obviously went with her, cream of the crop. You had two Trek riders and Canyon SRAM and another Park Hotel rider. So it was about 6 riders and Marianne Vos all got away. But Annemiek stayed on the front that entire time, just driving it unnecessarily, particularly when Trek had 2 riders there. She should have sacrificed one of them and got them to do some work, but that's Annemiek's style. She just goes off the front and just loves to TT it and put her head down. And so it really caused quite a big split. And the front pack had about a minute and a half. If you watch the men's first stage of the Tour de France, it was the same course and very, very sketchy descent. So the women did incredibly well, hardly any crashes, if at all, any hugely significant crashes. And, then it really came down to this very exciting last 5K where you had 3 world champions all in the top 6 riders. So you had Marianne Vos, Annemiek van Vleuten, and then Lizzie Deignan, who's an English rider. And it's really worth noting, in the 2012 Olympic Games, Lizzie Deignan came second to Marianne Vos in the Olympics. And that was a really big, you don't usually say you lose, that you lost gold, you win silver. She really felt like she did lose gold because it was her hometown, and she got second to Marianne Vos. And so we came down to the last finishing straight, real diverse pack of riders. All money and bets were on Marianne Vos winning the sprint. She was the strongest out of there in a sprint scenario. And essentially, Elisa Longo Borghini, who also was on Trek, so she's on the team with Lizzie, she had been dropped after an attack. Whilst the riders were coming up to really they were looking at one another, starting to look at, winding up their sprint, Elisa Longo Borghini came past the group, took the lead and led out the sprint. This forced Marianne Vos onto Elisa Borghini's wheel. And please go watch the replay, watch it slowly, watch the slow-mos, because one of the most impressive things of the race was Lizzie Deignan's patience. She didn't attack straight away. She looked and went on the back of Marianne Vos's wheel. Elisa Longo Borghini is leading it out. So you've got Trek, I think it's CCC and then Trek again. But Elisa Longo Borghini didn't lead it out for very long. She sat up, which forced Marianne Vos to the front. She had to lead it out still with like 400 meters to go. And she was ripping a massive gear. And I think it picks up a little bit at the end. and she just completely ran out of steam. And Lizzie Deignan rolled Marianne Vos at the finish line and won. And you can really say that Elisa Longo Borghini won that race for Lizzie Deignan. And yeah, I think it's just such a testament to team riding, and that Elisa Longo Borghini won't be the one that gets to stand up on the podium. She won't get announced, and it won't go against her results or CV, but she absolutely won that for Lizzie on the weekend. So, yeah, a very quick summary, but essentially, yeah, I just loved it. It was an amazing finish, and yeah, I really recommend everyone replay it, go watch it, and support the women's cycling. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things is that it's all well and good for people to sit back and complain that there's not enough women's sport on TV, or what we need to do as spectators and as fans is go back and make sure that you do watch those things, because all those eyes on that race, whether it's during or after the fact, are important for, and working in the cycling industry, in terms of sponsorship, that's what people want to see, eyeballs on that event.
It does make such a massive difference, particularly when, there's a bunch of people sitting around a boardroom trying to work out whether it's working or not. Yep. This is the only stats they've got to go on, and there's no excuse at the moment. I don't think there's any other globally women's sport happening at the moment. So everyone is sitting on trainers, running on treadmills, particularly if you're in Melbourne, as we are at the moment. So stick it on the TV, stick it on your app, go search it on YouTube. There's been Strade Bianche, La Course, even the European Women's Road Championships and the French Road Championships. Like, go educate yourself, because it was just amazing entertainment and riding in those races. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Suzette has just said, awesome recap. Always a big deal to beat Vos at the line, and we couldn't agree more. Tils, La Course started in 2014, I think. And I was actually there on my honeymoon. After we raced at Challenge Roth, and then I wanted to go to France and check it out. And Chrissy Wellington was part of, I guess, the group of women who helped get it across the line. She was quite heavily involved back then. But from then until now, 6 years is a long time. Have you seen that specific event grow, expand over those 6 years?
It definitely ebbs and flows depending on what the organisers plan to do. And so it is organised by the ASO, and they have shown and proved in many circumstances that they don't really appreciate the women's cycling, and they don't give it the same emphasis or attention that it really deserves. And so over the years, some of it has been terrible racing, just purely because of the route that they have picked, the day that they're looking to do it in amongst the tour. But this was certainly one of the better races, which had nothing to do in a way with the ASO. It was the course and certainly the riders that really made it. Back when it started, it was really just a criterium, which in the men's race, that course is a bit of a procession. So it's a nothing race until the very last K. So it's not really you just need courses that really show the true potential of women's ability and cycling and just their pure skill. And if you get that sort of course, which can come in an array of different styles, that's when we can really see the true celebration of women's cycling. So they've got a long way to go. There's rumours at the moment, or there has been actually a call that they are looking to do a women's the Tour de France in 2022.
Okay.
But what that looks like, we're yet to see, and it's obviously for everyone involved or everyone who's not at the ASO, it is coming very late to the piece, and just is well overdue. But there is a lot happening in that space. Women's Paris-Roubaix, a lot more things around, the courses and the racing that women really deserve. And they're showing it. there was a way better women's stage one, the course, than the men's stage one at the Tour de France. The men's stage one was absolutely marred with crashes, and if it hadn't been raining, it would have been a dead boring stage. I just think the women, they had one stage, 96 Ks to make it, and they just made it a really entertaining few hours.
Yeah. I want to touch on, we just released a podcast with Lisa Norton last week, and she's a professional triathlete, elite triathlete, who has been, I guess, dabbling in this women's cycling world. And I flat out asked her, is she going to, choose one over the other? And unfortunately for women's cycling, she pointed out that it's a very, very tough living. And I guess You've seen both sides, with both being involved in both sports. Can you tell us just how lucky, in comparison to women's cycling, women or female triathletes are?
Well, yeah, I think she brought up some really good points, which was a little bit depressing, but also I'll point out some other things that are particularly in this current time, actually really positive for women's cycling, because cycling's going and triathlon's not at the moment. But Lisa really pointed out the fact of when you're on a team, pretty much all of the control and decision making is taken out of your hands, and that's really true. It is very much a team sport. You will see, even in the men's, the riding, that in La Tour de France at the moment, there are riders who are more than capable of winning, but that's not the team plan. The team plan is to make sure that person wins, and so they have to be on board to help that person, not their own individual ambitions. And so Lisa brought up a few good points just around, if you do go on a team, you can't choose any of your own equipment. It's all sponsored. You don't get to make any of your own decisions around where you want to race, how you want to race. It really is around that team environment. But, triathlon can be at times, I know you have a support team, but it is a very solo individual activity. And having that team can have some real positivities. And so you definitely don't get into female cycling to make much money. I've known professional women to come back to Australia with only $100 in their account, but a lot of things are paid for them over there. And also, should there be a crash, should there be injury, should there be a pandemic, they are a part of a team which pays, albeit a very minimal salary, a salary at the moment. So they're not relying on sponsor bonuses or result bonuses either at the moment. So, and I think the reason why, and yes, it is problematic that cycling is happening in Europe at the moment, which is becoming again the epicenter of COVID, they are able to do it probably at a better than triathlon, because they can create these team bubbles, and it's not all these individuals just coming into racing. They move around these team bubbles around Europe, and there's a lot of team restrictions, etc. So they have been able to get cycling back. Whether it lasts is a big question. Whether the tour is going to make the 3 weeks is very questionable at the moment. And so, yeah, I think there's still a lot of positives, but there is a huge amount of challenges. And the biggest thing that Lisa brought up as well is just the disparity still between men's and women's racing is enormous compared to triathlon. Only just this year have they gotten rid of podium girls, and I think that sort of puts it in a nutshell of where ASIO is at with women's cycling. Yeah.
Absolutely. Some amazing points, and I didn't even think about whether the tour, I just had in my head, if it went ahead, it would be absolutely going all the way through. But 3 weeks is a long time, particularly when, the world we're living in right now. And how many countries do they go into?
Yeah, I think it's at least 2, but mainly in France. But it's more the areas. So I think a lot of other people will know this, but we don't have it in Australia yet. But they have traffic light systems on whether the country is COVID safe or not. And essentially, the tour is going through some very serious red areas and provinces which have very high rates of COVID. And so it's very loose on, ASIO came out, the organisers had pretty strict some rules which have then been relaxed again. So if any two of either riders or support staff in a team contract COVID, the entire team must leave the tour.
Wow.
Now, there was a testing at the start of the tour, and there will be testing on the first rest day. So whether everyone makes it through after the first rest day or not, but, the organisers are very money driven, and they will keep the race going for as long as possible unless the government steps in and calls enough. But it is quite, I know it is easy to criticise the athletes with them being over there and swanning around, but it is very challenging for the athletes, the cyclists. They have to stay within their bubbles. They have to have tests every day. And, as much as I'm just a bit of a jealous bitch at the moment because I can't be outside, I know it is very challenging for those who are over there in Europe trying to race and not knowing when and if they'll be able to come home.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's a key as well, when they can come home. Tils, before I let you go, what is cycling looking like for women in particular, but I guess generally speaking in Australia and New Zealand in the coming sort of 6 months?
Yeah, so in New Zealand, I know they're doing a lot of racing. Is not so much road races, but they don't have a hugely strong road season over there as much anymore. But there is a lot of off-road racing. Kate McElroy, ex-triathlete, still killing it on the trails over there. And so there's a lot of those sort of exterior events going on over there. But in Australia, it's, as we know with everything, it's very state-based at the moment. There's a lot of local club and some state racing going on, but certainly nothing within Victoria. And pretty much the National Road Series has all but been cancelled, which is very challenging. And then it's all eyes at the moment on how will they run nationals, which happen in January. And the Tour Down Under, we're hearing different things on what that could look like. Very unlikely to go ahead as an international event because they would force everyone into quarantine who were to come here. Even if they were to set up these, sort of bubble passports, we can't see that going ahead. But whether it will run as a national road event, so just all of the Australians and potentially Kiwis to come across and race, is fingers crossed, because pretty much the biggest highlight of the entire year is January. It is our summer of cycling. It is the absolute pinnacle of the racing here in Australia, and just an amazing festival. It's what we all work towards for the entire year. So hopefully there's something that can come out of that and we can try to string something together. But the next next big race for the women's cycling is the Giro Rossa. It is biggest race in the women's cycling in the year. It is happening from the 11th of September to the 19th. It's 9 stages going around Italy. It will overlap with the last week of the Tour de France if it is still going. And, watch this space about whether it goes ahead or not. But definitely get on it before then. Watch some races, educate yourself, and it's really entertaining. Yes, definitely go support it.
Yep, definitely. Absolutely. Make sure you are supporting women's sport across the board wherever you can. Tils, thank you so much for joining me. Have you done your hour of power outside yet?
I went for a 30-minute walk. I did my hour of power on the trainer this morning, watching highlights of the men's stage 2. So I might sneak in another 20 minutes. Can you break it up? I can't remember. Maybe that's illegal. So I won't say I'm going to do that.
No. All right, mate. Take care of yourself. Right. Hopefully we'll see you next weekend on the Chef Brady Cooking Show.
Thanks, friend. See you guys.
See ya.
Bye.
Well, there you have it. Tills has been across women's cycling from many different angles. She's an elite cyclist as part of the Specialised Women's Racing Team. She works with Specialised. She used to be a pro triathlete. She knows her stuff, and always really interesting insights. I cannot say this loud enough or enough at all. Please make sure that you do follow along any women's sport. If you really want to help make a difference, that's how you make a difference, is by tuning in, whether it's live or after the fact. Tune in to those different women's sports. Now, before we get on to the next thing, just a reminder, breaking news just before we went live, the NOOSA Multisport Festival has been cancelled for this year. We had a few people commenting earlier. Joe Coombs said it'll be toasty in February, but let's just clear that up. The Noosa Shire have announced that they will not allow an event over 500 people take place until February. So that doesn't mean that the Noosa Triathlon and Multisport Festival weekend will take place in February. They are just not letting any event over 500 people take place in that area. So from the sounds of things, from the Noosa Triathlon event page, head on over to the Noosa Triathlon event page for more information. It looks like the 2020 edition of the Noosa Tri and Multisport Weekend will not be going ahead. I've seen a few people comment. Thanks for your comment. One of the comments that I loved was from, I'm just scrolling back, Tanya Davenport, and she said, it's sad news, but if that is the most important issue in my life, if I can race, then my life is pretty good. Couldn't agree more with that. Certainly a sad day in the world of triathlon and multisport, but the most overused sentence or the most overused word during COVID and lockdown and whatever has to be pivot, and also has to be it is what it is. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Now, this week, we are bringing you something slightly different. Laura Siddall, who is our race reporter here at Witsup, has sent in her race wrap up from what was meant to be a weekend of a few races, but Mother Nature kind of struck again. But she still sent in her report. We challenged her to give us a 2-minute wrap up, and this is something that's going to go ahead in the following weeks, hopefully. But we challenged her to give us a 2-minute wrap up of this weekend's racing. So here it is. Laura Siddall, take it away. Oh, that Oh, apologies, guys. I have no idea what has happened. Oh, I feel terrible. Sid was up quite late trying to get that sorted. Shane has just said, nope, just your mic and a tram. Huge apologies. I am going to try one more time. If you lovely people are watching, please let me know whether you can hear sound in just a second. Please bear with me. Let's give it one more shot. Oh no, I don't know what to do. This is gut wrenching because we know how late she was. Now I can hear myself over on another computer because I'm trying to make that work. I am so sorry, guys. I'm going to throw this one up on screen, hope that it works. And if it doesn't, I'm giving up. Come on, Sid. You can do it. We have a failure. Huge apologies to everyone and a huge apology to Sid. I'm going to add that video in the comments. It's just one of those things. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Let's type that. Can you hear me? My goodness. Still no sound at all. Oh, it's a bit delayed, but hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to try and get that sorted and pop it in the comments. Can you hear me, people? Yes, Emily, thank you for coming to my rescue. There's about a 10-second delay where you try and riff for a little bit before I can get any notifications. All right, everyone's, yep, thank you, woo! Really disappointed, don't know why that's happened. Okay, let's go back to NOOSA. That is the big news of today. Just before we went live, we did find out that NOOSA Triathlon Multisport has been cancelled. The reason being is the NOOSA Council have announced this morning that no event over 500 people will take place in the NOOSA area before February 2021. So that means the NOOSA Tri 2020 edition is gone skis. And obviously that includes the multi-sport festival, the whole weekend. Now, we just saw the notification before we went live, so I haven't even had a chance to chat, to the team at Ironman to find out if there's going to be any kind of workaround. We don't know. Till suggested that maybe it's just a pro race and they do something around that. I have no idea. Would love to hear your thoughts about that one. So we will not be seeing, from what we understand, the NOOSA Triathlon Multisport Festival until November next year in 2021. So very unfortunate news about NOOSA Tri, particularly for those from Melbourne, Joe Coombe, Peter Coombe, who moved to Queensland so that they could race. But there are other races going ahead still in Queensland. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Sunny Coast 70.3. Those of you in Queensland, where does Mooloolaba fall under in terms of shires and whatnot? The Noosa Shire, it's just up the road. I imagine Mooloolaba is in a different shire. I don't even know where the shires are and what the different locations are. But it will be interesting to see if other shires follow their lead. And this is just me riffing. Joe said they were canning all the side events to reduce crowds, so I expect they won't go pro only. I agree with you. I think it will be done and dusted, unfortunately, for the year. As I was just saying, it'll be interesting to see what will happen in Mooloolaba being under a different shire, but will other shires take NOOSA's lead? I've no idea. Like I said, I am just riffing on what could potentially happen. Okay. Do we have any good news? We certainly need some good news. Tills was here earlier and she was talking about Le Course, the women's elite race as part of Le Tour de France. And that had outstanding feedback. Great race. Tills talked us through it. So if you missed that, just scroll back at the end of the video and she can fill you in. But more importantly, get online and check out that women's race. It sounded epic. I didn't get to it live because we were doing a Chef Breddy, I think, when it was on live. But make sure you go and check that out. It sounded epic. But what is your good news? I would love to hear some good news. What's happened in your world that is worth sharing with me? I'm not going anywhere until I hear from at least one person. We've got a few people watching, so I know you're listening. What is some of your good news from the week? I'd really love to hear from you. In the meantime, I'm going to see if maybe I can add that video in the comments from Sid. I know she's going to be disappointed that that didn't work out. I'm dreadfully sorry to everyone, and also to Sid. It's just the beauty of technology, unfortunately not working for us this time around. Good news. I'm not going anywhere until you give me some good news. I know you're watching. Who's watching? Anna, I've lost over 10 kilograms in lockdown. That is unheard of. I think you may have given them to me. I'm pretty sure I have put on 10 kilos in lockdown. Anna, great job. That is awesome news. Fantastic work. What are you doing that's, I guess, different to any other time? Have you been focusing on that? What's been, I guess, the motivation for that? Who else have we got? Joe. Peter might have some work coming up. That's awesome news. Congrats, Pete. Fingers crossed for you guys. That is fantastic. Emily, my 7-month-old just crawled up a flight of stairs. Oh my gosh. I remember when Frankie started climbing upstairs and you would just be hovering above them all the way. She learnt on some wooden stairs as well, which were like slats. So there was gaps underneath. So I just had these awful images in my head of her falling through those gaps in the steps. But that is great news. Congratulations, little mate. Nice crawling. Nadine has said, good news, summer weather in Christchurch over the weekend. Got a top and started the summer bike tan lines. Nice one. Bring on summer. It's been beautiful weather here. I mean, it's been raining and stuff, but when the sun is out, it's been quite nice here in Melbourne as well. So certainly looking forward to some nicer weather. Although in saying that, being stuck in lockdown over a period of 6 weeks, which we're not even there yet, I think it sometimes helps when it's shitty weather because you don't have that urge to be outside. You're not looking at the sunshine, just wishing you're out there playing. But then again, shitty weather also is a little bit more depressing. So, Anna, eating less takeaway food and training harder. Motivation was seeing photos of myself at Geelong 70.3. But tell me, losing weight, fantastic. And if that's a goal of yours, awesome. But do you feel fitter? Do you feel stronger? Do you feel like you can take on the world a little bit better after all of that? Fantastic news, by the way. I'm trying to think of what my good news is for the week. I should probably prepare that. My good news actually of the week, which I can't remember if we discussed it last week or not, but is the Chef Breddy show. Bit of cross promotion while we're just tying things up here. We launched the Chef Breddy cooking show, which we've had 2 episodes and it's been super successful. Breddy is a fantastic chef, but he's also not surprisingly, but it's not his jam. He's quite good in front of the camera. So we've had people joining in as he takes you through cooking gnocchi and risotto on Saturday night. And we've been having heaps of fun with it, trying to find a way to deal with the changes that have been forced upon us with changes to his work. And it's been a success so far. I think we might be cooking maybe a scrumptious, fancy Thai beef salad on the weekend. So that might be next. If you're interested, just check it out. Chef Brady, it's on Facebook. You'll be able to find it. Anna, feel all of these things. My run pace is up. I'm setting threshold power records and taking segments on Strava. Good job. Fantastic work, Anna. Great to hear that. I know you're one of the people who is looking forward to seeing Sid's wrap up. I do apologize. I'm going to put that video in the comments, so stay tuned for that. And then hopefully next week we'll be back in business with a video that has audio. Don't know what happened there. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. Actually, before we go, we've had another good news, which I love. I've got to share them. Nick has just said, at last, you were going to, I think you were going overseas, I think last week you said. The first ever Ultra 355k try was announced for Hervey Bay at the end of Feb. That is a bridge distance between Ironman and Ultraman without the need to spend a bunch of money or bringing crews to race. That's interesting. Day 1, 5k swim, 100k bike. Day 2, 200k ride. Day 3, 50k run. It should be epic. Nick, have you signed up for it? I'm assuming yes. I assume you have. I did see something about that. I'll need to look into it a little bit more, get in touch with the crew from Hervey Bay, and find out a little bit more about that. Sounds exciting. Personally, I'm just excited about any kind of event happening these days. So, sounds good. If you can go ahead, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. It was great to catch up with you all. Just signing out with a reminder that the NOOSA Triathlon Festival has been cancelled for 2020. Hope you're all doing well. Look after yourselves. Make sure you check out the La Course women's race online wherever you can find it. We need more eyeballs on women's sport. And we will see you same time next week. Peace out.